Hello, everyone. This is the 10th episode of Hydra Book Reading Club series. And in the last video, we finally finished modulation. And in this one, I'm going to talk about colors. It's a new topic. Although we have been working with colors, what is new? I mean, also, if you have watched the beginners tutorials and intermediate tutorials, I've already talked a lot about color functions, but I'll try to go deeper following the book, but also sometimes diverging from the book and to see what colors we can use, not just like what is given, something easy, but something more difficult. And as you can see in this background right now, the first one is gradient, and I just saw that Seb's example. I'll just minimize myself. Like if you go to some of the examples, you can see Seb using in this one, for example, like exactly this is a gradient, like moving around, and gradient function itself is like seems very basic. I can just show it to you, as you know, and it's like not really appealing to use, but in the example what you just saw, you can see that, for example, moving this around or tiling, repeating, that can make something interesting. Um, yeah, for example, like just repeat it and I don't know, Kaleido. So if you like start to combine these like geometry functions, it can start to be something, and that's very different from like how like Voronoi or OSC creates. So that's a way. Well, this is not really about color. What I'm talking about, it's about geometry. But combining this color and geometry, maybe you can find something fairly new. So just don't treat like gradient as gradient. That's the whole point. What I want to say, and just like in the example here, well, it doesn't actually say it, but the second, well, no, the first parameter, the only parameter that gradient takes by default, 0. But if you add something, it adds like the blue channel, which just oscillates from 0 to 1, 0 to 1, like a sine wave. We have seen a lot of sine waves like OSC, but basically this parameter adds the sine wave to the blue channel only. So red, green will not change. Blue channel goes from 0 to 1. That's why it makes this kind of like magenta cyan color. And if you want to slow it down, you can make the number smaller, that will go slower. But what if you just want the blue channel to stay like maximum, so that it's like, I want just this. How can I freeze this? So this is like where I want to like really talk about colors. And it's not in the Hydra book itself, but for example, if you just want this moment with gradient, then what you can do is, well, let's first freeze the gradient because we don't want this oscillation. Although if you're like, if you really want to like freeze the frame, there's one way to do it, which is, I think I explained in the feedback episode in the intermediate tutorial, that, for example, you can just do this out to 01 and wait, am I doing it right? No. So this is 0, right? And then if you do like source 0 out 01, no, 0. So this is like a basic or like a minimum feedback you can do. Basically, you're taking the last frame and putting to the previous frame, no, the current frame, and you just run it and it'll just freeze. See, it's frozen. Although this is probably not the way you want to like craft precisely, so this is not really, it's useful to know, like if you want to like freeze a frame, if you're like working with a webcam and if you just want to like freeze it somehow, that's the way to go. Just evaluate source 0 and out to it, freeze. But what I want to do here is I just want to be more precise. So let's say I gradient is 0, so it's always frozen. And the easiest way to manipulate RGB individually is to add a function. I don't know if I used add a lot in this tutorial because it's not like my go-to function, let's say. I use like layer, mask, these kind of blending operations. I actually don't use blend so much, but it's also a useful function to know. Add, you can use this to precisely like manipulate colors, for example. And what if you just want add to red channel, or in this case, blue channel? The way to do it is, here comes the solid function, which is basically, if you do solid out, it's solid as a texture, it's a source, and by default, it's just black, like pitch black, whatever it means. 0. I think it's alpha is 1 still. We don't have transparent browser, so it's opaque, but it's, anyways, we're not gonna go there. So if we say like solid 001, that's blue color, which I like, and as you know, and if you just add 001 to gradient, then you can achieve this. And this is just to note, this is very different from the color function, because color function, what it does, well, in this case, it's black, because gradient itself doesn't have any blue channel, and color is more like a filtering, so it multiplies. So our like red channel multiplied by 0, green channel multiplied by 0, blue channel multiplied by 1, which is no change to blue channel, but gradient doesn't have a blue channel, so you don't have anything here. If you add blue channel to gradient with this oscillation, then you can actually see this kind of nice blue oscillation, which is not probably the most exciting thing to see, but, and also like I have this whole repeat Kaleido thing happening, but doesn't really matter because it's the same color everywhere. So yeah, like this is like really nerdy, weird stuff, but Hydra book is really about like, how can we go nerdy about these Hydra functions and to do something that is not always like intended. But you start to see like interesting things, findings. That's how I wrote Hydra book, like not just like combining, okay, OSC, Kaleido, boom, but what if we do this like weird stuff? So I'm doing this weird stuff and like this. And also, if I get really, okay, so this is like, maybe for some of you, like this gradient, color gradient, this is more familiar than the original, like this one, depending on the tools you use. Maybe this is more like Unity or whatever, like Blender, like sometimes you see this kind of gradient, and then that's what you want to use. If you want to use this one, then, you know, maybe this is a pattern that you want to use a lot. And actually, like, for my eyes, I think it's pleasant because maybe it's more blue. Okay, so also, like, if you get really nerdy, how can it achieve this? In this case, maybe like I'll just keep it like 100, because if you do like 001 color, then it's black. 100, then this is like only taking the red channel, so you can actually see what gradient actually does, and you can like filter red channel, green channel. So green channel is like increasing over Y direction, and red channel is increasing over X channel. You can see that. I don't know if I'm doing it right. Okay, I'm flipped, so it was wrong. I'm sorry, but you get the idea. And with this combination of, basically they are like red and green channels essentially, and with this combination, you see that this kind of yellowish on one corner, black on the one corner, but it's not like this horizontal or vertical anymore because it's a combination. So you kind of start to see what does gradient do. And also, if you like really want to get nerdy, you can also recreate this color function by mult and the same solid. So it's kind of like, there we go. So this is essentially color 100, but I'm recreating this by doing multiply solid. Or if you do 010, then you can see the green channel only. And this is like exactly the same as color. Well, it's not exactly how it's operated within Hydra, but the result of the calculation, the resulting texture is the same. And you can see like now, like these are like siblings, like mult solid or add solid. And this is basically like how the Photoshop filter or layering works, right? If you multiply the layer to the base layer, or if you add to the base layer, it kind of brighten, or brightening is another kind of function in operation in Photoshop, but it's basically if you add things, it's going to like become more like brighter and brighter. Multiply is more like a filtering, so it's it's not always becoming brighter. Some part may become brighter, but also darkens when one layer has dark colors. So yes, so there's a lot to talk about for gradient, but I think it's quite interesting to like kind of dig in more. And of course, you don't have to use 001. If you like want to use 005, 0.5, that's also fine. This is like different kind of color, and you can start to like manipulate these parameters like to see what actually you want. And this is like already something that you don't see often in Hydra, and you can use this with combination of these geometry functions to start creating shapes. And in the next video I'm planning to make, I will use this. So basically it's kind of like building up for the next video. So making this kind of color palette, let's say, and how can we remap it, which I actually already talked about in the modulation function, but I will revisit and try to use like what if noise function, but with this color palette instead of like black to white kind of, monotone. It's not monotone, it's a gradient, so grayscale color, or Voronoi, which is also grayscale. OSC also with the third parameter 0, it's grayscale. How can we use this color palette? So in the meantime, you can just like play with it like this, always doesn't have to always repeat Kaleido. It can be like, oh, this is actually not so interesting because I think it's the pattern has to be more like horizontal, so I can do like rotate, I don't know, 1.7 or something, 1.6. Anyways, and you can start to create these interesting patterns like this. It's like kind of sun, but I don't know, springy. I don't know what it is. Anyways, but I'm just experimenting with this, right? So that you get the idea. And what if I do like this? Yeah, this is like very different kind of color tone. So yeah, gradient plus add solid, mult solid, you can start to see something very interesting. So that's beyond the book, and I just talked all these things just about this gradient, and next one is oscillator, and let's dig also into this oscillator as well, because the way I always use oscillator is, well, I'll keep this as a kind of record here, and I don't even have to, yeah, so I can share the same code later and in the description down below. And so what about OSC? And I'll just keep this. For the OSC, I think I'll use a little bit different strategy. So let's start from the basics. Or like maybe like 6. I just use 6 because it's like almost like one cycle of sine wave. Must be like 6.2 or 6.3, whatever, like basically pi multiplied by 2. And from here, well, let's say 6 is just approximation. Like if you want to be like really precise, you can use math.pi times 2 and so on, but just for now I'm not doing anything precise, so it's okay. And what I'm going to do here is to add the third parameter, the famous OSC third parameter that makes it colorful. And I use this as color palette a lot because it's easy, and if you make this more, then you can start to see this kind of nice rainbowish, although it's not rainbow, it's shifting phase of 3 RGB sine waves. So that's why it looks a bit like rainbow, but it's not exactly rainbow because it's not a color spectrum. And if you really want to make color spectrum, I'm going to diverge a lot here, but I'm going to do it anyways. There is a way, like very kind of ad hoc way to do it, which is actually, there's a hint in the following example in Hydra book, which is hue, and there's like a feedback with hue. And this is like already creating some kind of gradient in this one here. So what if I really want like a nice rainbow? And the way I do it is using feedback. And I don't know if I use shape 2 here. Yeah, shape 2 is one of my favorite shapes that doesn't exist in real life. Maybe on the spherical coordinate or whatever, shape 2 is probably possible. Like basically two sides, right? So it's like infinitely long two sides that never merges in Cartesian coordinate, but if it's different coordinate system, it can exist. But I'm not a math person, so that's the basic understanding I have. In Hydra space, you can have shape 2, this becomes a line, and you can manipulate or control the size or thickness by the second parameter, and I'll keep the third parameter 0, so the edge is very sharp, because for the feedback it's quite important. And okay, so basic feedback, so I'll layer it like this, and I can do luma. Also, I can do R function, whichever you like. I use R because it's shorter, basically taking red channel and replacing all the green, blue, and alpha channel by the red channel, so it actually visually doesn't change here, but also it is actually changing something, which is alpha channel, which is replaced by red channel. So in this case, it's almost exactly the same as luma, but I can keep it as luma because, for making it with more verbose and easier to understand. And what I want to do here is I want to have some kind of like shifting. So it can be like scaling. Scaling is not really precise here, but I'll just use it because it's easy to use. 1.0, I don't know, 5 or something. Remember, if you're doing feedback with scaling, you want to start with a small number, which is close to 1. It's not close to 0 because no scaling is 1. So if you want to have a bit of scaling, that's close to 1. So it can be like 0.95 if you want to like start like shrink it gradually. But if you want to like expand it gradually, that's this. And just executing this code is probably not that interesting because it will just like expand this whiteness. Expand whiteness. It's not political, I meant anything. But basically what I want to hear is, after doing luma, I want to color it, just like we saw. And in this case, let's say I want to color it with red. So now this red is like just bleeding. Yeah, literally. And here I want to add hue function, but again, this isn't in feedback, so I want to start with a small number, and with a hue, no change is 0. I mean, it can be actually 1, but for just to make it simple, I'll just keep it close to 0, and I don't know, 0.01, let's say. And what will happen is that it makes this nice color spectrum. Maybe I want to make it a little bit more dramatic, something like this. So you see that actually this is a color spectrum, and this is somewhat different from what we saw with OSC colors. Let's compare. I mean, okay, maybe also like I will rotate it so that, which part should I rotate? I think the rotation should happen, the shape has to be rotated. And this I will make it actually quite precise because it doesn't have to be, but I just want to keep this geometry rotation like super precise, because if there's like 1 pixel, 2 pixel offset, then it kind of becomes funny. I can compare. So no, this is actually divided by 2. Interesting. And I can compare. Like if I say like 3.14 divided by 2, so it's like 1.57 or something. And if I do this, it's actually, there's no change. But if it's like 1.5, then it starts to, kind of make this. This is also interesting. It's actually quite interesting. But let's keep it like this. And comparing this, maybe I'll scale a little bit smaller. So, I mean, because I start to see these lines, like pixelation. because scaling is not evenly pushing the pixels. The pixels further out will be like scaled more, and that's like a big like problem if you want to be like very precise. If I really want to be precise, there are techniques to do it, but I'm not going to go into this right now. Okay, let's compare this to OSC, and why is it not doing? Okay, it's here. So it's kind of similar in a way. I mean, you know, just forget about this geometric, you know, symmetry and so on. In this case, it's like more like a repeated texture. This is more like a symmetric texture from the middle. But in this one, for example, you see this like clear like pink, or I don't know, is it magenta or pink? I don't know. But this color, for example, here. But if you see OSC, this doesn't really exist. There is like this kind of blurry line between blue and red orangey color, but it's not that clear. And this is the difference between OSC RGB shifting versus color spectrum. And by hue, you can create like a proper color spectrum, because hue is like going through different hue of the colors. But OSC is just like 3 mountains of sine waves that are shifted. So it's different. It's actually completely different. Visually, it feels similar. Also, I think the order of the colors may be different, but I'm not sure. This is like red, yellow, green, blue, pink. Here it's red. Yeah, green comes here. Red, yellow. Well, no, it's the same. Red, yellow, green. Okay, it's the same actually. Red, yellow, green, blue, pink. So it's almost the same, but also the distribution is a little bit different, and some colors that are visible in the more like rainbow spectrum is not present in OSC. So they're like different things, but if you really want to like use this color spectrum, you can use this. I'll also keep this somewhere in the code here. I'll just comment it out and just push it back here. But if you go to the description down below, I'll make the link to this sketch. So if you can just comment in those ones, and if you find that this is interesting for what you do, please use it. And also please share with me what you create. So here, I'm coming back to OSC, and I want to like, this is already quite a lot of things, just with gradient and OSC, which is quite exciting to me. That's like the motivation of this Hydra book, not like, okay, you combine this and more functions, but like I'm talking about, okay, why does this work this way? This is really about Hydra book. And okay, so there's Colorama and things I talk about. Okay, Luma, things there, interesting, but it's kind of straightforward. Also, this Luma thing with a shadow, I actually already talked about it in the intermediate tutorial, explaining one of the example sketches I contributed for Hydra Editor. So what I'm going to talk about now, because I want to prepare something with this color remapping that I'm going to cover in the next video, which is also kind of heavy one, which is, again, I talked about it in the modulation section, but I want to like revisit how we can use like really create different color palette applied to OSC, noise, and so on, to make really something that stands out, something that you haven't seen, I haven't seen, which is exciting. But to create a little bit more with this OSC, basically what I want to do, I'll just take this out, is I'll like stretch this out a bit more, or even more. So now I'm like zooming in basically to change the first parameter of OSC, which is the frequency. If you make it smaller and smaller, in the end you will just like see almost the same color. I mean, you still see the gradient here, but it's like really subtle, getting subtle and subtle. And what I'm gonna do here is, well, now I'm kind of like stuck to this, like starting from light blue, bluish, to something. And if you, well, someone like me who likes this blue color, that's perfect. But what if you want to have like a subtle gradient from, I don't know, orange to red? There is one way, for example, like combining with the color function, add solid function to manipulate this. That's also an option. but there's another way to do it, which is to kind of like scroll this OSC and zooming it in. So let's just go back to this one, and I want to have this like orange to purple. Then I can say scroll X and kind of center it. But then the problem with the scroll X is that it kind of wraps around. Well, it's not kind of, it does wrap around. So you start to see this edge because it's whatever is pushed out comes back from the other side, kind of. So I don't want this edge here, so I'm gonna like scale it in. So you get the idea, like you can just kind of stretch it, like shift it a little bit, stretch it in, out, well, in, I don't know, stretch it, yeah, stretch it so that you can see only this like gradient part of the OSC. And you can always like, for now, let's combine it with like different geometry functions to make interesting patterns. It doesn't have to be circular, but I just like to make it circular, or this, which is like very different from how you would like normally create just with like gradient, OSC, colorama, kind of like always end up with the same kind of pattern of the colors. But if you start to craft these colors, then you can really see interesting results like this. And it doesn't have to be like precisely this way. And also like what's interesting here is that you can just like start to manipulate this a little bit, and you really start to see like different results. And of course, since we're using scroll X, if you add the second parameter, it will start to move. And if you want to kind of have this, well, it doesn't have to be slow. If you make this bigger, it will be faster. But like it's kind of like gradually changing color scheme, then this is a way to do it. And so I'll probably like end this video here. Although this sharp edge, I don't like it. The culprit is here. I think if I do like math pi times 2, then you will see no edge. Let's take this out. Yeah. So now it's like really, to me, it's kind of uncanny what is happening here, because OSC itself is stopped with 0, you know, but just like you're having this OSC second parameter to move it, because now it's like completely wrapping around with scroll X, it's kind of doing the same thing. I don't know if it's clear to you, but it's quite interesting effect what's happening. Like you can also do an exercise, you know, how to create OSC without using OSC or something like this. I think there's a way to do it, but I forgot. Or maybe not OSC, but like a gradient, for example. Or is it gradient? Or soul wave? Like, can you create soul wave from repeating gradient? They're like really interesting things you can do if you get really nerdy. But let's stop here. But you can basically use this pattern of code to create interesting color patterns. So if you find something interesting, please let me know in the comment down below. You can just copy and paste the code. You cannot copy and paste the URL, I think, but you can always, you know, just paste it there. And for those who have done it, thank you so much. I appreciate people doing it, and I also check the code. So it's really like a fun thing to do. And also you can, you know, it doesn't have to be in this description down below, the comment section down below, but you can post it in the Facebook group, Discord group, or like a local chapter of like TopLab. There are like Signal groups, Telegram groups. You can just ask around and find the right community you want to be part of. And I hope this video does mean something, does something to you. And if that's the case, please hit the like button, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.